Hey everybody, so I just got done making a video for my new channel, Play and Rate with GV, where we'll be playing and rating games. And I wanted to upload that here as well as on that channel to get some feedback here, as well as to just show you what that new channel will be all about, because I'm pretty proud of this video. So any and all feedback, positive or negative, as long as it's constructive, please leave below in this comment section or in the other comment section. But yeah, this video will basically be mirrored for this channel, but this is the type of content you can come to expect over on the new channel, Play and Rate with GV. So yeah, let me know what you think and enjoy. Hey, it's me, GV, and welcome to Play and Rate with GV, where today we are playing and rating none other than Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. This is one of my favorite Game Boy Advance games of all time. One of the few Kirby games I actually am a big fan of. That and Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards. I'm not that much of a fan of Kirby, actually. I haven't played too many Kirby games in general. Really want to play that new post-apocalyptic one for the Switch. I've heard good things about that one. But yes, today we are playing and rating Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland. By the way, on the back, you may be able to make out that it says KG. Shout out to my friend Kyle from elementary school. So sorry I never gave this one back, but it has been very well loved. Sorry I completely forgot to give this back to you before I left Florida way back in the day, but thank you so much for your contribution to my collection. Holy crap, I just realized this is a remake of a 1993 game for the NES. Oh, and I almost dropped it. Which I'm familiar with, but I didn't realize this was actually a remake of that until just now, because I was looking at the release date for Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, and it came out on the Game Boy Advance in 2002, which is probably right about the prime spot of all of my gaming, early to mid 2000s, late 90s. Right there is the sweet spot for me personally, so you'll probably see a lot of Game Boy Advance games on this channel, as well as Nintendo 64, stuff around that era. But Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland is a side-scrolling platformer. Obviously, it uses Kirby's iconic ability of sucking in enemies, taking on their powers, and then using those powers against other enemies. Kirby, in general, is a lot easier, I would say, than most other platformers of the time, or at least most other platformers in general. You can basically just hold right a lot of the time, and a lot of the powers are super overpowered. You can use my favorite power, which is the electric shock power sort of thing, and then basically just have invincibility and kill everything. So it's a lot more of a nice, casual, breezy sort of playthrough than something like Mario or Sonic. So let's start with the story. This one's very simple, as with most platformers. Basically, Kirby is going through on an adventure and trying to stop the nightmares, plural? I don't really know exactly. Like, you don't get a lot of story. I didn't realize until the end of playing through this, which, by the way, was extremely short. We streamed this recently in like 2 hours and beat the whole thing. I didn't realize that most of the story is given to you at the beginning of the game, and then when you beat the game, it kind of gives you this whole diatribe of what's been going on, where King Dedede, I don't really want to spoil the story, even though it's not that big of a deal, obviously, but King Dedede was really trying to help the kingdom, and there was a further, more deplorable evil that Kirby must adventure to stop. But the story is really not present whatsoever until literally the very end of the game. And at the beginning, which, you know, if you care about that sort of thing, make sure to watch that cutscene before you actually start the game, because I did not even realize that was a thing. Music-wise, this game is fantastic. There are some awesome tracks on Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland that were extremely nostalgic for me. A lot of them a lot of the nostalgia factor due to Super Smash Brothers and, you know, any of the Kirby themed stages, but also Kirby 64 and the Crystal Shards, like I mentioned, and just playing, you know, other Kirby games here and there on other friends' devices. And yeah, the music actually holds up really well. I found myself humming and singing to all of the tunes basically as we were playing this over on Twitch. Whee! Yeah! Graphically, this game is great and holds up really well. It was actually very pleasantly surprised at the animation, graphical fidelity, just how pretty all the sprites looked, how bright the game was, how great the hub world looked, how realized it was, and the variety of locales that you would venture through as Kirby. And I want to put a special emphasis on those animations because I was actually wowed. I don't want to spoil certain bosses and things, but some of the bosses looked fantastic, and the little animations of them getting hit with Kirby's various powers were really, really, really well done. And that brings us to the gameplay. So this kind of threw me for a loop because I didn't even realize that Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland was a remake. I had never played the original Kirby's Adventure or whatever it was called for the NES. So that explains a lot now that I think about it, because a lot of the areas are pretty easy to navigate through. You can, as I said, kind of hold right a lot of the time and not put too much thought into stuff. The only challenge is really how cumbersome the game feels, and this will be a commonality between a lot of these reviews of games from this era, probably just because going back to these controls, they're not as fluid as controls are these days with a lot of stuff. So, you know, moving Kirby around, he feels very floaty and feels a little clunky, and so a lot of the time you'll be running into enemies, and that really is the main challenge. Not just bumping into enemies or having enemies bump into you, basically. But outside of that, the game is pretty easy. I found myself, I said that really weird, I've found myself with a multitude of lives a lot of the time as I was going through this game, and not really in danger of having to use a continue or anything. It's a very, very, very easy game and incredibly short, again, at 2 hours. But the joy comes from obviously sucking in and using all of these different powers, of which there's quite a lot in this game. There were some pleasant surprises where, even though that this game is heavily nostalgic for me, I was like, oh, I forgot about this power. Oh, I forgot about this power. Oh, I forgot about this power. And there's a good variety in the powers as well in terms of how to use them, because some of them are just infinite use, whereas others are so strong that you can only use them once or maybe 3 times. So using all of those different powers and rediscovering some of the more rare ones was actually a very exciting experience, and that is where the fun in this game lies, as well as the mini games. There are so many mini games in this game. It's really great actually going through and seeing in the hub world all these different stops that you can stop at, take a breather, and do a random thing like hot potato, or my personal favorite, the rail race sort of thing. I guess the precursor to Kirby's Air Ride. Yeah, there's just so much variety in the gameplay of this particular game, which apparently there wasn't as much in the original version, because I think the mini games were all added. That being said, I do find Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland definitely a little simplistic going back to it. Again, that 2-hour completion time with a multitude of lives, obviously playing with an adult brain and not a child brain like I did back in the day, was a little disappointing, getting to the end so quickly. And, if I had done all content in the game, it really wouldn't have been that much longer. Obviously, this is a handheld game, so they're going to be shorter in general, but I was surprised at how quick it took to go through this entire game. And, I was making mistakes left and right, but still had a constant amount of around 20 lives. And even the final boss, I remembered it being very difficult as a kid, and then we just blazed through them this time around. So I would say that my main issue with Kirby games persists, and that is it's just a little too simplistic for my taste. I definitely prefer stuff like Mario and other platformers of that nature to Kirby in general. That being said, this game is highly nostalgic for me, so I had to go back and play it. And what would I rate Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland? I would rate it, play it for the nostalgia. If you grew up with this game and you want to go back and play it, the music is so nostalgic, the environments, Kirby looks great, the animations are great, all the different powers. It's a lot of fun just to go back and experience it for the nostalgia. I wouldn't say this is like a must-play game going back to it, but it probably is one of the better tiers in terms of, it's probably within one of the better tiers in terms of what the Game Boy Advance had to offer. So yeah, you should go back and play it for the nostalgia if you have access to the cart, or if you have a friend named Kyle who you took it from and forgot to give it back. Whoops. And that's another play and rate with GV in the bag, ladies and gentlemen. What did you think about Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland? Let me know in the comments section below. Would love to hear your opinions. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, big thank you to my patrons over on Patreon for supporting me in what I do, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.